Let's start the class. So, in today's class, we have uh, these things to cover. So, we have done subject verb agreement, pronouns, and verbs, which are some of the more difficult ones. And in this class, we are going to do parallelism. So, parallelism you'll see a lot in the longer sentences, but it's actually easy to identify. And even if you read the sentence aloud or in your mind, you should be able to get the parallelism correct. And we'll talk about assumption, strengthen, weaken, and evaluate. We won't be doing these four question types, but I've written them because you need the assumptions so that you can solve the strengthen and weaken. And you should be able to solve strengthen and weaken questions for an argument in order to evaluate it. So basically, I'll give you a very brief idea of what evaluate questions are. So you are given an argument and you're given five options. And the question basically says which of these will help to evaluate the argument. So which of these can help to find out whether the argument is strong or it's weak. So it is kind of interconnected with the assumptions. And we'll talk more about it when we come there. And finally, we'll be doing a few shorter passages. It's a bit challenging to cover really long passages, but I'll try to cover the long passages in the next few classes, especially the ones that have like three or four paragraphs in them. So let's start with the parallelism. So, how do you identify a parallelism question? Uh, all right, so usually the parallelism questions are not going to be as short as these phrases are showing you. So in all of these examples, I'm taking examples of London and New York, which are names of two cities. So basically these are nouns. You have parallelism among various different things. You can have them with verbs, with adjectives, with very different kinds of grammatical structures, but I need you to just pay attention to these markers of parallelism. So whenever you have any two, three, or four things joined by and, you have to make sure that all those items are parallel to each other. And if you remember the first class where I talked about punctuation, I told you that if you have a list of lists, for example, A, B, and C, D, E, and F, and similarly another one like G, H, and I. The basic thing that I told you was about the semicolons, but you need to remember one thing in them, that these three items need to be parallel to each other, these three need to be parallel to each other, and these three need to be parallel to each other. But they don't have to be parallel to the other groups. So A, B, and C do not need to be parallel to the other few things. So it's only within lists of items that are happening. So what I mean by parallelism is that if you have these three things, for example, London and New York, you have any two things separated by the and, you have to make sure that A and B are parallel to each other. So either they are both nouns or they are both verbs. If they are both verbs, they have to be in the same tense. For example, let's compare London. For example, I went to London. Let me change that. Okay. So this is actually a comparison sentence, but it still uses parallelism. The weather of London is better than New York. Now, this is a comparison question because you have better than, but it also uses parallelism because what you're trying to compare is you're comparing the weather of London. You're showing that this is better than this. Although both of them are nouns, but you're actually comparing weather to a place. So technically, this is a wrong sentence. It should be the weather of London is better than that of New York or the weather of New York. Okay, is it fine? Is this understood?
Yes.
Yeah, Priyanka?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So the important thing in this part is knowing these markers. So you have and with two or more than two things. When you have both this and this, so this is tricky because sometimes you get verbs and half of the verbs will be written here before both and half of them will be written over here before the and. So you have to be very careful. For example, I will both eat and will drink. So do you think this is a correct sentence or is there a problem?
There's a problem.
Yes. So what you need to do is you need to identify that you have a both and you have the and. What comes after both should be parallel to what comes after and. So you have two options to correct the sentence. Either you take the will and put it here, which will increase the number of wills that you have. It won't be really concise, but it will be correct. Or you can simply eliminate this will. And I think I've covered this in one of the earlier classes. It's just like maths. Either you take it common in front of both of them, or you use it for each one of them. But you can't say that you use it only for one of them and not the other. So it's that kind of concept behind it. So then you have to be careful about the or, neither, nor, either, or, not, but, not only, but also. This one is important. It's used a lot of times, especially when instead of just simple nouns, you get really long groups of sentences. So you have to identify what that group is actually behaving as. Is it behaving as a big noun or a really big verb? So in that case, you have to compare the not only and the but also. Similarly, rather than, between, and, from, to. Now, this is important. Distinguish London from New York and distinguish between London and New York. They are both correct and they both mean the same. The only difference is the absence or presence of between. So, right now, it may look a little easy to look at these, but in the GMAT, what you'll get is you will get lots of words over here and many words over here, many words over here. So they try to use the similar simple structure and just keep on adding more and more words to make it more difficult to solve. So you have to be very careful. This is where the split comes. So probably if you have distinguish in the question, you will have a few options that have between, you will have a few options without the between. So all you need to do is match the between with the and then identify whether those two things are parallel to each other or not. Okay. Is this all fine? Any doubt till here?
No, that's fine.
No? Okay. So this is how you identify that you have a parallelism question in front of you. Now coming to what kinds of things can be parallel. So the first example is that of nouns. You have London and New York. You can also say London and you can compare it to New York's streets. Well, technically, in some cases, it can be correct. But just like we saw in the weather example, you have to make sure that even the meaning is parallel to each other. So either you compare city to a city, or you compare the city's weather to the other city's weather. You compare apples and oranges, or you compare the taste of apples to the taste of oranges. So you have to be very careful with regards to the meaning there. So that's how parallelism can be there between nouns. It can also be there between adjectives. So in the second one, English cuisine and American cuisine. Well, actually, if you look at it, these are the adjectives, English and American, but they are both describing cuisine. Cuisine is a noun, but you can also write this entire phrase as English and American cuisines. So in that case, you're clearly comparing the adjectives. If you have English cuisine and American cuisine, again, you have to make sure that these adjectives are being compared. Basically, the meaning should be similar to each other, they should be parallel to each other. And then verb. Now, verb is tricky because you can have lots of different kinds of verbs. We've already done that in the previous class. You have 12 different kinds of verb tenses. So you have to make sure that you maintain the tense. especially when you have words like has been or have been with them. For example, I have been working and eating at the same time. Now, this is a correct sentence because you're talking about working and eating separated by and they are parallel to each other. You can also say, I have been working and have been eating at the same time. Grammatically, that's going to be correct. The only problem is this option that I have right now, it's more concise. So you have to take into consideration the concision factor. Try to keep all the tenses same, but also make sure you're not using words too much. Like when you have an option that uses less number of words, choose the concise option. The fourth one is adverbs. So adverbs, we've done this before, they help to describe verbs, adjectives, and other adverbs. So you have to make sure that whatever adverbs you're using to describe one particular verb or one adjective or another adverb, they are parallel to each other. And then trained and practiced, these are still verbs. But for example, if I say, I have trained and practiced, or I have heavily trained and practiced, again, in this case and in this case, you're still comparing verbs. So you have to maintain the parallelism between verbs. So what I'm showing is basically different versions of parallelism. If you get something like to train and to practice, in this case, you have to make sure that you have the to for both of them. You can even say to train and practice, which is also fine. What you can't do is you can't say to train and practicing. So that will be having different tenses. That's going to be wrong. But you can definitely say to train and practice. So you're basically assuming that to is used for both of them. And then verb with ing. So if the first verb has the ing, the second one should also have the ing. Another case is when you have prepositional phrases. This is where you get sentences that are longer. So any phrase, a group of sentences that makes complete, a group of words that makes complete or incomplete sense. If that prepositional phrase is starting with a preposition, you have to make sure they are both prepositional phrases. You can't have the first one as a prepositional phrase and the second one as a tense. So this one is also a little tricky. And the last one is also tricky because, again, this is where you get really long sentences. So, in this last one, clauses basically mean sentences that are used within another sentence. So, if you see the green portion over here, I was lonely, that is a sentence. I wanted company is also a complete sentence, but they are being used within another sentence. So, what you have to make sure is that if there is parallelism between them, they both have to be complete sentences. You can't have one as complete and the other as incomplete. So it says, I thought that I was lonely and that I wanted company. Can you think of another correct way of rewriting this? Probably by using less number of words.
I thought that I was lonely and wanted company.
Yeah, that could also be correct. So in that case, you remove the I. So it's more with the meaning that you have to go with. And we'll also see that in the questions that we solve. So you have to understand what the meaning is. In these examples, you really can't get what the meaning is because these are just parts of a sentence. So there are a few more rules. The first one is that when you have three or more items, so this is more a punctuation rule, you always have to put a comma before the and. And this doesn't apply to simple words like A, B, and C. It applies to the fact when you have more than one word for A, more than one word for B, more than one word for C. So when you have verbs here, or prepositional phrases, or groups of nouns, in that case, you have to put the comma over here. So this is important. And it's not tested so much in the hard level questions because it's a punctuation thing. Punctuation is mainly tested in the easy level questions. So this is one important punctuation rule. Now, this group of examples that I have here, this is to show you that parallelism can happen in layers. So if you have an example, maybe part A and B are supposed to be parallel to each other. What will happen, or what GMAT test makers do to complicate the sentences, they will add a few more items over here between A and B. And the correct sentence should have parallelism between these two. And probably they'll add something over here also, E and F. And there should be parallelism between these two. So you have lots of things going on. You have a total of 6 different items present, and meaning is going to guide you with respect to which 2 items need to be parallel to each other. So you have different layers. For example, the first one, I believe that Carol and Jim are coming to the party. So the parallelism is clearly between Carol, which is the noun, and Jim, which is also a noun. And these nouns are both names of people, so there is parallelism between them. The second one, I believe that Carol, my classmate, and Jim, my professor, are coming to the party being hosted today. So this is all extra just added to confuse you, to lengthen the sentence. If you look at these groups, the meaning that they give is still of Carol and Jim. So, meaning wise, they are still nouns. What this is added is just to lengthen the sentence, nothing else. The third one, I believe that Carol, because she is close to me, and Jim, my professor, are coming to the party being hosted. So, again, if you look at this entire group of words, it is still talking about Carol. That's the main meaning, Carol. And then you have over here, this is still referring to Jim, which is a noun. So, here also, I'm talking about 2 nouns. And how do you confirm that these are nouns that we're talking about? You look at the verb, are coming to the party. So you just ask yourself the question or try to combine or link these words together with logic. So, what is coming to the party? It has to be people. So, the parallelism should be there between the people, which basically means that all these extra words, which might make you think that the sentence is wrong, are actually not even that important. It's mainly about Carol and Jim. So, that was about the first 3 sentences. Read the fourth one, and I'm telling you beforehand, it's going to be a wrong sentence. I want you to find out what's the error in this sentence.
Is it who is neither my classmate nor liked by anyone?
Yes, and Lakshmi, what do you think?
Yeah, same one. It looks like neither my classmate nor is liked.
Yes. So basically, what
That's a
you
verb, I think.
yeah, the is over here. You either use it over here and over here, or you just use it once in the beginning before the neither nor starts. So this is what is going to actually happen in the wrong sentences that you see today, and otherwise you will have longer sentences, but you just have to take care of these words. These words basically give you a clue that there could be a problem here. So if you get a very long sentence and you will have like other 4 options that look really the same, just focus on the neither and the nor part of it and eliminate options based on this error. So that was good that you were able to get this. And that is all about parallelism that you need to know. There's nothing more about parallelism. It's only about, are you able to identify which 2 things are supposed to be parallel to each other? Sometimes you can even have 3 things that are supposed to be parallel to each other. So let's do a few exercises. Okay, before going to the sentences, I'll just go through a list of some more phrases that you need to be aware of, that I don't miss them. So X acts as Y, this is fine. All you need to do is just think of examples. For example, my brother acts as a teacher. So let's say my brother acts as a teacher. This is correct. And even if you say, my brother acts as if, what do you think should come here if you want to maintain the same meaning?
As if he is
As
a
if
teacher.
he were? Is it he were?
It's going to be he were, yes, because it's a hypothetical situation. So remember that subject verb agreement thing that we did. So you are going to use were for he because it's hypothetical. He's not actually a teacher, but as if he were a teacher. So just be careful with what should come after the as. These are really small words. It's very easy to misreading them when you're looking at a really long sentence. As X, so Y. I'll tell you which are the important ones. This is important. Sometimes these X's and Y's are really long groups of words. This one is important. This one is really, really important. Consider X, Y. It's so important that I think there's a huge chance that you will get at least one sentence using this. So usually the wrong form that is used is consider X to be or consider X as Y. So all of these are wrong. Nothing should come between X and Y when you're using consider. So be very, very aware about consider. In contrast to X and Y, this is also fine. Sometimes the Y can come before. For example, Y in contrast to X. This one is also important. And differs from, so X differs from Y is important. Distinguish. Estimate is also tricky because you may have some other variations like estimate X as Y or some other variation, but it has to be to be. So these ones you need to remember. With consider, you don't put anything, but with estimate, you put to be. With known, you put to be. With known, actually, you can put known as well. I think I might have covered this in one of the previous classes, but I'll cover this once again. For example, if I say, I am known as, or I am known to be. Okay, if I want to put the word honest, in which sentence should I put the word honest? The first one or the second one?
Second.
I am known to be honest, yes. So usually adjectives go here. Over here, something like a noun should come. I am known as a believer or something. So again, be careful about what comes after the noun, and then you're going to decide whether the sentence is correct or not. This one is quite easy. All you need to remember is whenever you have less or more, you need to have another than in 100% of the cases. A few other tricky ones, not only but also is tricky. So you have to make sure that X and Y are parallel. Regard is tricky because sometimes you may have options with regard X to be Y, which is going to be wrong. With regard, it's always as. This one is also tricky. X is good, so too is Y. So you're basically saying that X and Y are both good. This one is important. Think of me as your sister. So me and your sister both are nouns. Uh, Thought to be, okay, this one is also confusing. Mm, And this one, whether A or B. So these ones are the more confusing ones. And yeah, any problem in this so far? Any doubt anywhere?
No.
Okay.
So, are there many of it, or like we have only this limited set of?
I think these
Um,
basically cover all of them. Yeah. There's
okay.
not much. So it's a little bit of overlap between another kind of error, which is based on idioms. So by the time I think we reach idioms, you will have covered most of the errors. It's mainly the way some words are without any like consideration of grammar. That's just the way they are written, like compared to. But I think this list covers all of them.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, now look at these sentences, the first two ones. Now, none of them is wrong, but they do give you different meanings. So I want you to read the first two ones. I came to class every day, took notes, and listened attentively. I came to class taking notes and listening attentively. Let me remove this every day because these two sentences are supposed to be similar. Now, grammatically, they're different. I want you to tell me, do you think they give out different meanings, or even the meaning is same?
I think the meaning is different. Like,
How is it different?
I came to class taking notes and listening attentively. So is it happening at the same time? I mean, first I would come to class and then take notes or like something like that.
Okay, so you're saying that in the first one, there could be a difference of time.
Yes. So I think
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. But even if they were happening at the same time, I would still have a sentence that looks the same. So there is a little bit of a time issue. But the main thing is that if you look at the first one, you're talking about three actions, and you are assuming that these three are separate actions. I came to class, I took notes, I listened attentively. In the second one, I came to class, this and this. So, what happens in the second one is these two actions are happening as a subset of the first one. Okay, did you both understand it?
Yeah.
yeah.
So, in the first one, you're talking about three separate actions. In the second one, you're actually talking about one main action, and these two are basically parts of that same action. So, again, it depends on what kind of meaning the sentence is trying to give you. Because in the first one, you have parallelism between came, took, and listened. All of them are verbs. But in the second one, parallelism is needed only between taking and listening, not with the came. So again, it depends on the meaning, and you'll have to look at the clues that are given in the sentence. It should make sense, and then you see which option is better. Let's look at these two ones. First one, I came to class every day, took notes. So you're talking about came. Just a minute. I came to class, took notes, listened, and passed. And similarly, I came to class, taking notes and listening attentively, and passed the pop quiz. So here you're talking about two main actions. They have to be parallel to each other, and these two, they have to be parallel to each other. All right. Did you get this part?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Just give me a minute. I'll just be back in a minute. Okay. So let's move on. Okay, so these are for you to try out. Try out the first one. I think some of them are correct, some of them are wrong. So look at the first one. Okay, what do you think?
Doesn't I don't think it's parallel because it's a verb, earning good grades, so it should be like between doing exercise and earning good grades, or between exercise and good grades.
Um, okay, researchers have found a correlation between exercise. So, do you think earning can be used as a noun in some other? case in some other example? Like one is obviously earnings, like earnings before revenue or earnings before taxes. That is different. But earning, just earning, do you think it can be used as a noun?
Well, earnings, like you said, earnings before taxes, that's not really a verb, right?
Yeah, that would be a noun.
The
What
noun,
about
yeah.
earning of good grades? Do you think this whole thing it's acting like a verb or a noun?
Noun.
Yeah, this one would be a noun. So you have a noun here, you have a verb here. This one is a noun. So you can place that in place of this verb to make it correct. So be very careful about words like earning or words like cutting, because cutting, like paper cuttings or this newspaper cutting, that could be a noun, it could be a verb. But if you say cutting of trees is bad, so cutting of trees, what do you think that is? Is it a noun or a verb? Cutting of trees is bad.
Noun.
Cutting of trees is bad.
Mm,
Yes, that's going to
like
be.
cutting trees would be a verb, but I don't know cutting off.
Yeah, cutting off will be a noun, but if you just say cutting trees, that's going to be. So small things, but they end up being reasons for wrong options. Okay, first one is done. What about second?
I think there is an error. The baseball game was as exciting to us as, I mean, it should be the game that was exciting to the people sitting behind the home plate. So, I
Yes,
think
so you have as here and as exciting to us as to the people sitting behind home plate. So the two is missing,
yeah, yeah.
uh, because you're basically comparing, yeah, exciting to us as to the people sitting behind the home plate. Okay. Okay, third
And
one.
also, there is one subject verb agreement issue after the comma, I think.
Over here.
Although we are sitting behind the bleachers, the baseball game. Is it correct? I think there is.
Yeah, this is correct. Why do you think there's a subject verb agreement?
Uh, because somewhere I saw after the comma, although we were sitting in the bleachers, it should agree with this particular. We were sitting in.
I think you're confusing it with the modifiers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I
So what you're saying
used the
is
wrong
like this.
statement.
So how would we correct that if that were the problem? Is although we were sitting in the bleachers, we were as excited by the baseball game as were the people sitting behind home plate. Maybe that could be a more correct version.
Yeah, so this would be correct, right? We after the comma, we would be
Yes,
correct.
we would definitely be correct. Yeah. Okay. Third one.
They don't agree with each other, seek and facing.
Mm, yes. Choose to seek employment rather than face those salaries.
Yep.
Right. Fourth.
Mhm. a chance to rest, but also energizing. So it's not parallel, I think.
Yes, so you have not only but also, so gives and energizing don't match. Okay, so it should just be energize you. Okay, fifth one. This one should be easy.
It should be and improve instead of be improving.
Yes, so that's the error here. You have the and
Yes.
will increase and improve. All right, the sixth one.
Should those be included again?
Yes, so you have two,
To those who are virtually unknown. So
yes, those should come here. Okay, good. Seventh.
And uninterested. It shouldn't be they were.
Mhm. Okay, interested. Should it be uninterested to make friends or uninterested in making friends? Or do you think they are equivalent? Well, definitely in making is better. Although it's not wrong the way it's written right now, but if there were an option in making new friends would be much better. Uninterested in making new friends. Okay, eighth one.
Is the more necessary, I guess?
more X than Y kind of thing.
Yes, because you have two reasons and you're saying one is bigger. So the first reason is bigger than the second. You have more here, you have than here. What comes after more? So you're beginning with because, so you should use the because here as well. Or what you can do is you can move this because over here and you can just say did poorly on the test because no, I think that would not be, that wouldn't make sense because more they had not studied. So leave this one. This option is better. You add the because here. Okay, ninth one.
And causing discontent.
It should be caused, yes. It's actually a simple sentence. The blizzard deposited, prompted, and caused. So all these extra words are just added to confuse you. Okay, tenth one.
As children.
Yes, as children, or you can say when we are children. Both of them are correct. You just choose whichever option is available. Okay, 11th.
Should be both student and administration.
Both as well as, yes, you have a 2 here, but the 2 is missing here. So you need to correct that part of it. Okay, 12th.
No, it shouldn't it be like to both student, like something like both X and Y or some
Yep.
as well as.
You have already put the 2 here, so you don't need this 2. So you can say to both the student body as well as the administration.
Okay.
But
Would it be
I thought
wrong
it.
though? If it just
mhm.
Yeah, I was thinking it should be and. Is it not correct?
This is also correct, both and as well as. So and is equivalent to as well as in this case.
Okay.
Yeah, Priyanka, were you saying something?
I was just asking, like, I understand that it's better and more concise to put the two and then just delete it from there. But would it be incorrect if the two was as it is?
If you remove this 2 over here and then add a 2 here, and you keep this 2 also, it would be correct. But
Okay, but
does
just to have that two there by itself is not right.
yeah. So either you have the 2 before the both and, or you don't have this, but you have a 2 here and you have a 2 here.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Okay. The 12th one.
Like shaken and face are not parallel, I think.
Do you think this should be parallel?
No, because it's just tobacco companies face an uncertain future. To delete
So
all
the
of it.
basic sentence is just that tobacco companies face an uncertain future. And all of this extra, it's just a description. But let's go through this. Tobacco companies, shaken by a string of setbacks, but which retain strong growth prospects in the developing world. What do you think about this part? It could be correct, it could be wrong.
I'm not sure about this, but which especially, I don't know. It doesn't seem right.
Do you have another version of the same sentence?
But retaining, would that work?
Okay, shaken by a string of legal setbacks, but retaining. Tobacco companies. Let's just remove the extra words first. So you have tobacco companies shaken by a string, but which retain strong growth prospects. I think it's correct because if you remove the which, it won't really make sense. Try reading it without the which. Tobacco companies shaken by a string but retain strong growth prospects. You have to use some kind of pronoun to refer to the tobacco companies once again. And that pronoun is which, that is referring to the tobacco companies. I think this would be correct. It's not a very common way to write these kind of sentences, but there's no grammatical problem. You do need some kind of pronoun there because shaken, it's not an action that the tobacco companies are doing. If it was like tobacco companies did something but retain strong growth prospects, then it would be fine. But you're talking about shaken by, so something is doing an action on these tobacco companies. That's why you're using the by. The shaken by, it can't be really equated with but retain strong growth prospects. So that's why you need the pronoun here. Okay, did you get it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lakshmi, what about you?
Yeah, I got it. This quite difficult, I think.
Yeah, this one is confusing. It's not very smoothly. It's not flowing smoothly. So yeah. Okay, 13th.
It should be and has if they want to, like, because it becomes everything is parallel, then it doesn't.
Yes, over here. So who cares? about healthcare, this, and this. Hmm. Do you think there's need of another and somewhere? So these two are fine. Who cares and has the experience? I think another and should be added here. So this person basically cares about healthcare, the environment, and the travails of ordinary men and women. Right? Do you agree?
Yeah.
Okay. So you have these three nouns over here. Healthcare is a noun, environment is a noun, travails is a noun. Okay, 14th. The 13th one had a lot of different things going on. Okay, 14th.
And free internet. I don't think the provide should be there.
Yep, provides.
Where there are comfortable chairs and free internet access. Yeah, that would be fine. You can also say the consultant is looking for a cafe that has comfortable chairs and provides free internet access. I think there are multiple ways of writing this sentence correctly. Okay, 15th, the last one.
Is it in prestigious journals instead of in a because it's corroborated by scientists? The plural parallels.
No, it's fine because the parallelism is not between scientists and the journal. It is between corroborated and published. And the third one is garnered. So the claims have not been this or this, but have this. So, and have is being used for the first two, which is fine. And it's also being used for the last, which makes the third one parallel to the first two. So, like in maths, you would have something like this. So that is what's happening here. So this is a correct sentence. Okay, any doubt in this one, the 15th sentence?
No.
No? Okay. All right, so let's move on to full questions now. Okay, let's do this one together, and it's a simple question. African sleeping sickness is characterized by low grade fever, the difficult swallowing, violent shivering, and darkening. As soon as you read it, we're talking about four different nouns here. We're talking about shivering, darkening. These are used as nouns, not as verbs. Fever, noun. So whatever you choose here should also be a noun. Okay, which one do you think should be the answer?
C.
B, difficulty to swallow.
C.
See?
It's going to be C.
C.
Uh, to swallow is fine, but with difficulty, we usually don't use to. So that is one of the idioms that you need to be aware of. Difficulty in doing something. If you just say difficult, then you can say difficult to swallow, but when you have difficulty, it's swallowing. And the main noun here is the difficulty. So you're comparing fever, difficulty, shivering, and darkening. So yes, C is the answer. Okay, so that one was easy. Let's move to this one. Okay.
Is it D?
D. Okay, now there are three things happening in this sentence, and two of them should be parallel to each other. One is the first part, in no other historical sighting. Second is this, did Halley's Comet cause such a worldwide sensation? And third is what is supposed to be your answer. The parallelism should exist between the first and this third one because you're talking about two different kinds of sightings or two different kinds of events. And both of these events caused sensation, but you're comparing which one caused a bigger sensation. So when you choose your answer, it has to be parallel to the first one.
I think it's A or B. I can't decide.
A or B. In no other historical sighting did the comet cause such a sensation as did its return. It's not the return that is causing that sensation. It's the sighting. So sighting is the one that is causing the sensation, not the return. So it's not going to be A. It's not going to be D. Actually, the answer is C. One big clue is the word in over here. Now, this sentence is kind of twisted in its structure. What you're comparing is in no other historical sighting did it cause such a sensation as in its return of 1910 to 1911. So basically, the another way of writing the same sentence would be, let me write it here. So Haley's
I don't understand though. It's as in its return of the year. To me it doesn't make any sense.
the return of return. Check in its return. Let me write another way of this. Haley's comet caused a bigger sensation in this than in any other. Okay, so I think why C, it's sounding a little weird because maybe you're comparing this return. You're looking at this return like a verb, but it's actually being used as a noun here. Like, for example, tour of 1999 versus tour in 1999. Both of them are correct, but they give out different meanings. Tour in 1999 would mean someone is touring in 1999. So that would be a verb. But tour of 1999 would be the noun. Like we went to the tour of 1999, but not in the tour of 2000. Are you able to understand this difference?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you see how C is the answer now? The parallelism should be there between this option and between in no historical sighting. So historical sighting is acting as a noun. So is return of this year. So this is also acting as a one big noun. So in this noun and in this particular noun. Any doubt in any of these options?
No, it's fine.
So although like the biggest clue in this would be the in, there's no other option with in. Uh, but yeah, this is a difficult question because you have to look at it from a different angle. So, for example, this sentence that I wrote down, Halley's Comet caused a bigger sensation in its return of this year than in any other historical sighting. That would be a simpler, more straightforward version of the same. So all that they've done is they've shifted the paths here and there and made it more confusing. But this would definitely be a 700 plus level question, although it looks really small. Okay, so if there's no problem in this question, let's move to another one. Okay, try this one. Were you able to identify the considered?
Is it C? I'm stuck with C and D. I don't know. Because what I'm saying is better than her husband. No.
B.
Okay, let's eliminate the options that have the wrong form of considered. So considered to be is wrong because with considered you put nothing. Okay, this is a spelling mistake. Considered as a is also wrong. Considered to be is also wrong. Considered, it's fine. Considered as, again wrong. So the answer is D, but that was because of considered. Let's look at the parallelism now. Although she was considered among her contemporaries to be the better poet, later she was overshadowed by success. So in A, the parallelism, it seems fine. In B, although she was considered as a better poet than her husband, she was later overshadowed by his success. Yeah, I think that would also be correct in terms of parallelism. C, later overshadowed by the success of her husband. Uh, her poetry had been considered better than that of her husband, so this is fine because you're comparing poetry to poetry. D is fine. E, her poetry was considered. Yeah, see, there's a problem in E in terms of parallelism also. You're comparing poetry better than her husband. So that's a problem. You can't compare poetry to husband. Her success, his success. Yeah, this one is fine, but this one is wrong. And even in B, if you look at she was overshadowed by his success, there's no parallelism here. And the others, over here, Browning and his success. So there are like a couple of pairs that need to be parallel to each other, and I think D is the only one that, uh, yeah, D takes care of everything. Okay, anything you would like to add or any other error that you found? Or any doubt you have?
So considered that's an idiom because I'm
So with
considered
considered,
among her contemporaries. Yeah.
considered you put nothing in front of it. No to be, no as, nothing.
So, like for example, B was considered among her contemporaries better poet.
Yes. So you should have just removed the as. Okay. Any other point?
And the I don't understand the parallelism for she was later overshadowed. You can still be a person can be overshadowed by someone's success, right?
But usually it's going to be success is overshadowed by success. So look at the meaning. I think in real life, we do definitely sometimes say like a person is overshadowed by some other person's success. But think about it, it has to be success overshadowed by some other person's much bigger success, or someone's skill being overshadowed by another person's much better skill. Did you understand it?
Okay.
Okay. Any other question about this question? Any doubt? No? Okay. So let's move forward. Try this one. I'm just writing a few hints here and there.
Is it E?
Um, okay, could be. What about you, Lakshmi?
No, I'm confused in this.
Which option?
Uh, Hold on. Yeah, E seems to be okay. E and indicated.
A is wrong because it should have been a by over here. D is wrong because you're talking about two things, orientation and plan. So you can't use indicates. It should be indicate. That's a subject verb agreement. Uh, was C is also wrong. Indicating something was probably a church. Were its eastward orientation. That's just not the correct structure. So between B and E, Lakshmi, which one would you choose? Look at the meaning of B. A ruined structure found at this place was indicated by its eastward orientation. This sentence doesn't really tell us that the indication was that it was a church. So the structure is such, you just say that a ruined structure found at this place was indicated by its eastward orientation, overall plan, and artifacts. So this one gives you the wrong meaning, and that is why E is the answer. That a ruined structure found at this place was probably a church. So this entire thing, so this fact, this judgment is indicated by these two things as well as by the third thing, which is artifacts. So this one takes care of everything. So basically, parallelism should be between the eastward orientation, between the plan, and between artifacts. So all three of them should have by in front of them. We've already used by for the first two together at once, and we are using by for the third one also. Okay, so any doubt in this question for any option? No? Okay, so let's move forward. Try this one. I think this one should be easy. This one is easier. And especially where you have the has and had, look at the meaning very carefully. Is descended, descended.
Would be.
You think B? Okay, Australian embryologists have found evidence that has suggested. So in B, do you think it's correct? Do you need the has?
No, but I prefer it because of the descended.
Okay, because of the descendants. You think descended is correct? Okay, let's eliminate a few options. A is definitely gone. It's trunk evolving. So you need something like is evolving or was evolving. But that would mean that the trunk was evolving at that particular time, but it's like in the process of evolution. But that's not what's happening. It evolved and that's the end of it. So A,
It has to be C, D, and E. Yeah.
C, and E. Okay, so A is definitely gone. Even B goes because of this part. Because the evolution of the trunk happened. Okay, let's look at C, suggesting. So they have found evidence suggesting that the elephant had descended with its trunk originally evolved. Now, see over here, had descended and is descended. Although Priyanka, you said that you're choosing this option B because of the is descended versus the descended, right? Is that what you thought?
Yeah.
Okay, in this case, is descended, it's going to be correct because this is like a fact. Just like we say, we have evolved from early hominids, for example. So this is like one of those general facts that has to be used in the present tense, like the earth revolves around the sun. So this is that kind of a fact. The elephant is descended from an aquatic animal, or we are evolutionary cousins of chimpanzees. Okay, did you understand the meaning behind it? Because C and D would suggest that it it had descended from an aquatic animal back then in the past, but it no longer is descended right now. C and D and even B would suggest that the descending action, it just happened in the past, but it doesn't apply today anymore. Are you able to understand that?
Yeah, but I just feel like to suggest the elephant has descended would be the best.
Elephant has descended, you're saying that would be a better one?
Yeah, for me, it just like I can't logically make sense that is descended.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Has descended, okay. From an aquatic animal, and that. So the answer is actually E, to suggest that the elephant has descended from an aquatic animal and that its trunk originally evolved as a kind of snorkel. So there's parallelism between this part and this part. So yeah, I get you because if you put something like the elephant has descended, I think that would make much more sense. But given the kind of options we have, we will have to go with E. But yeah, has descended would also be completely fine. Has descended is descended. Yeah. So any other doubt on this question?
Is the best way for this, like, instead of getting too into the meaning, like the best way when you see these kind of questions is to like take like the actual like evolved and descended and make sure it compares, and then you can just cross out instead of like actually looking into the meaning of it.
Yeah. So what you do is look at like evolving in this. So in this sense, you need to look at the meaning only of this part, not the entire sentence. So on that basis, you can eliminate the first two options, and then you come down to these last three options, look at the difference between them, and then just make a choice whether you need had descended or is descended. And then you also have these words to suggest or suggesting. So if you remember, I told you that if everything else is same, always prefer the to form of the verb as compared to the verb with the ing.
So if I add that in option D, so
Mhm.
does it make it correct?
No, it would still be wrong because of the had. Had would change the meaning. So basically, had says that the elephant had descended in the past, but right now it has descended from something else. Like we lived in a particular country 10 years ago, but now we are living somewhere else. It would be a similar kind of logic there. So
Okay.
you have three versions. You can is descended is the correct one given these options. You can also say has descended. Um, and I think descended is also fine. This the one that's given in B. So if you had a combination of this part of the B option and this part of E option, I think that would also make a correct sentence. Descended would also go fine. All right, so let's move on to the next one. And be careful about the pronouns in this question, especially the they. Just keep checking if they is being used correctly.
D.
C.
D. D for
D.
Daniel.
Okay, let's eliminate first one. So, in most of these involve smaller amounts of money. This particular they refers to the election, the local ones. But according to A, it looks like they is referring to rules, which doesn't make sense. You can't say that the rules involve smaller amounts of money. It's the local elections because that's the meaning. So A is gone. What about B? Because they typically involve smaller amounts of money and present less opportunity. The rules. Again, they is being used for the rules. So he is gone. C. The rules that govern political contributions are less stringent in local elections than in national elections. So the in is missing here because they involve. Now they you are really not clear, so it's more of an ambiguous pronoun here. So C is gone. Okay, D versus E. D. Because local elections involve small amounts of money and present less opportunity for abuse than national election. Okay, this is fine. The rules that govern local political contributions are less stringent than. Okay, you said D. Do you think this part is correct, Priyanka?
No, I guess it should be then the rules of national contribution.
Yes, because you're comparing rules to rules. Yes, D is wrong. Let's verify E. Rules that govern political contributions are less stringent in local elections than they are in national elections. Okay, because local elections involve smaller amounts of money and present less opportunity for abuse. Yeah, E is fine. So why did you eliminate E first? What error did you find in E?
Well, I just found that like the punctuate, like it's just a run-on sentence. It just doesn't stop.
Okay, the rules that govern. But but do you understand why it is correct? It's not a run-on sentence because if it would have a comma in place of because, I think then it would have been a run-on sentence. It basically says the rules that govern political contributions are less stringent in local elections because local elections involve small amounts of money and present less opportunity for abuse. Did you understand how E is correct? Why E
Yeah.
doesn't have the run-on sentence problem?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So we don't have a lot of time. I won't be able to do many questions, but let's do this last question in sentence correction.
Is it B?
B, not only, but also. Okay, what comes after not only it did? Think about it again.
Okay.
Okay, Priyanka, do you have any option in mind?
I think it's B.
B, okay. All right, let's see B. So I've eliminated A and C. Let's look at D and E. And Lakshmi, what about you? You think it's B?
Yeah, I said it's B earlier.
Yes, because this one doesn't have the not only. Yes, B is correct. All right, so not only and but also is fine, and which gave consumers inexpensive houses and furniture, it's also fine. The clearing of forests. Yeah, so you don't really need to have and here because you can say that they got inexpensive houses and furniture because of the clearing of forests. So yeah, B is right. So there's one question that I want to ask you. Although I'm planning to do comparisons in the next week, like in this coming Sunday's class, do you want to cover more of the parallelism questions there, or do you want to move on to another error?
I would like to cover more on more practice question.
More? Okay, Priyanka, what about you?
Yeah, I'd rather do more sentence correction than like take that time for sentence correction rather than reading comprehension or something.
Okay, and what about the errors? Do you want to do one more class only on parallelism?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Yeah, that's fine with me as well because I'm seeing the questions that we are attempting. I mean, hardly anything I'm getting right,
What's the
and
next error? Sorry.
That's
Please.
going to be comparison errors, because we have enough time, like we have five more classes to go after this, so we can adjust.
Yeah, then that's fine with me. Yeah.
Okay, because anyways, in like reading comprehension, there isn't much like that you need to know new. Um, so yeah, we can afford little less time in that and more over here.
yeah.
Yep.
So CR and SC, if we could spend more time, because I most of the time as I said, I end up in two options. So more practice would actually help me in CR and SC.
Mhm. And there's also another suggestion. If while doing a few practice questions at home, if you find there's any question that you would like to discuss in class, you can just email me or message me. We can go over those questions in class as well. Okay, sometimes like you get a really tough question and you don't understand the explanation at all, so we can do them in the class as well.
Okay. Thank
All right, so
Sure.
let's move on to critical reasoning. Okay, so as I said before, we are going to do evaluate questions today, and you have the knowledge that you have taken from the assumption, strengthen, and weaken questions in evaluate questions. So don't read the argument yet. I'll basically tell you what we are going to do in evaluate questions. So you get an argument and you have the question, how do you evaluate the argument? You have five options, A, B, C, D, E. How you need to solve them is you need to obviously find what are going to be the assumptions for that argument, and it depends on whether you have a cause effect relationship. Is there a plan? Are we talking about statistics there? Are we comparing two things? So based on all of those different patterns that we did, you will have a few assumptions. So what you need to do on your scratch paperwork is you write down these options, and you will get these options in the form of questions. So first of all, you will get a question that which of the following options can be used to evaluate the argument. The options itself will also be in the form of questions. What you basically need to do is you need to answer yes for that particular option, and then you need to answer a no, and see if you're able to get a strengthening and a weakening option from that. So I'll explain this once again when we do the question, but this was just a basic idea before we go to this argument. So let's read this argument once. It says guitar strings often go dead, become less responsive and bright in tone after a few weeks of intense use. So it basically says that you have intense use, and after a time, the strings will go dead. A researcher whose son is a classical guitarist hypothesized, so this is probably the conclusion, that dirt and oil, rather than changes in the material properties of the string, were responsible. So this person says that the dirt and oil are responsible, not the change in material properties. So this is a cause and effect happening here. So there's a kind of assumption also being played here that this intense use will bring about a change in the material properties of the guitar. And this is the main conclusion. You have in cause and effect, and you have three assumptions in cause and effect always. So let's write them down for this particular argument. One is that there is no other reason. Second is going to be that it's not a coincidence, it happens with every guitar. And the third is that the reverse is not true, which doesn't really make sense here, but we'll still write it down. Okay, I just want you to tell me if you understand this argument completely or not. Do you understand what's the conclusion and what's the cause and effect?
Uh, can you please repeat it once again?
Mhm. Yeah. Okay, so this is a fact that is given to you that guitar strings often go dead, and this is what dead means after a few weeks of intense use. So, definitely, intense use comes before, and then the guitar strings go dead. The conclusion is this part, the hypothesis being mentioned by this classical guitarist's son, that it's the dirt and the oil, not the changes in the material properties of the string, that cause it to go dead. All right, that's the main conclusion, that dirt and oil are responsible for them going dead, not the material properties being changed. Okay, did you understand it?
So the researcher's son hypothesized that the dirt and oil. So okay, we have to derive the conclusion out of this.
Yes, that's the conclusion of this whole argument. Now, the question that I'm going to show you is going to be an evaluate question. So I'll move on to the next slide. You won't have this rough work, but you will have the main arguments. So try to write this down in short somewhere, that the dirt and oil cause the dead, not the material properties being changed. Okay, now you have these options. What, how you need to solve these questions is you write down these options, you answer yes for all of them, and you answer no for each of them. So let's look at option A and answer yes. Option A, determine if a metal alloy is used to make the strings used by classical guitarists. So if you answer yes to this question, that yes, a metal alloy is being used to make the strings, do you think it strengthens the argument or weakens the argument? Does it do anything?
No.
No.
No. And even if the answer were no, that it's not a metal alloy, it's some other kind of alloy or some wood or something, that is what makes it to go dead. It doesn't really matter. So A is not the answer because it doesn't help us. And even if you see, metal is not mentioned anywhere in the argument. So A is definitely gone. This is just a way to verify and be sure that you have the correct answer. Okay, second one. Whether classical guitarists make their string go dead faster than do folk guitarists. What if the answer is yes? Do you think it makes a difference?
No.
No, because we don't know about the use of these guitarists. Do the classical ones use more intensely than folks. So again, it doesn't really matter whether the answer is a yes or a no. Okay, C. Whether identical lengths of string of the same gauge go dead at different rates when strung on various brands of guitars. So we're talking about various brands and everything else is same. Only the dead rate is different. What if the answer is yes?
Doesn't matter.
Yes, because it doesn't really talk about the dirt and oil again, so you can't really strengthen this particular argument's conclusion. So again, I'll just write does not matter. Okay, D. Determining whether a dead string and a new string produce different qualities of sound. What if the answer is yes?
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter again. So this one is easy. Now, obviously, the answer is E because we've eliminated the other ones, but let's verify whether smearing various substances on new guitar strings causes them to go dead. What if the answer is yes? Will it strengthen the argument or weaken the argument?
Strengthen.
Strengthen.
Yes, it's going to strengthen. And if the answer is no, it will weaken the argument, right?
Yes.
Yes. So, what I want to show through this scratch paper work is that in these questions where you have evaluate the researcher's hypothesis or evaluate the argument, you need to get something like what's happening in E option. Sometimes you will get options that strengthen on yes, but on no, they do nothing. So that's going to be a wrong option. You may get an option that does not matter if it's yes, but on no, it can either strengthen or weaken. Again, that is going to be a wrong option. So basically, you have two kinds of right options. Either the yes should strengthen and the no should weaken, or the yes should weaken and the no should strengthen. So these are the only right answers that you will have. And in these questions, you can actually verify whether your answer is correct or not. So did you understand how you need to do these questions?
Yes.
You have to be really systematic in them because the options are in the form of questions. And if you don't put this down on some rough paper or a scratch paper, it'll get really confusing because then you'll have to remember 10 different kinds of answers, two for each option. Okay, so let's try one more question together. So this one is based on numbers. Let's only read the question now. The proportion of people over the age of 50. So let's just write it down. Proportion of people more than 50 years of age has increased in recent years as evidenced by an analysis of employment statistics. So employment stats are showing us. And what are those stats? In 1999, 10% of this workforce, the men over age of 50, and 6% of women, let me write man and women here, were employed. But last year, so let's talk about 2018, 18% of men over the age of 50 and 14% of women over the age of 50 were employed. And the conclusion is that the proportion of people over the age of 50 in the workforce has increased in recent years. So before going to the options, tell me what, like, can you kind of predict that on what kind of values or what kind of information would the strength of this argument depend on?
The percentage of the workforce currently.
Yeah, the total amount of people that are working, not the percentage of people from a particular age group that are employed, but from all age groups, right? So let's divide our scratch paper work. Okay, what if you answer yes to option A? Do you think it matters? Do you think it gives you something new?
No.
No, because how do you get the percentage of people over the age of 50 that were not employed? You simply subtract this percentage from 100, right? So it doesn't really give you anything new by which you can evaluate the arguments. So A does not matter. Let's remove it. What about B? Percentage of women that were 50 years old or younger.
No.
No, that also doesn't help you strengthen or weaken. Option C, percentage of people 50 years old or younger that were employed. So you don't have a question here. So what I'll suggest you is look at extreme options, extreme answers. Like, let's say the percentage of people 50 years old or younger. So basically, you're talking about less than 50. It's, let's say, just 2% versus that same population being 98%. Do you think that would make a difference?
No.
What about you, Lakshmi?
Oh, I'm still confused. I'm just.
Okay. If you're confused, which is normal in this question because uh, it is based on numbers and it's confusing, let's remove A and B. Let's move to, let's keep C. D. Percentage of people 50 years or older or younger that were men. First of all, tell me, do you think this gender matters here?
No.
Look at the conclusion. The conclusion doesn't say anything about gender. So the options that talk about gender are anyways eliminated. And we also eliminated
So serious.
people that were not employed and people, again, women. So the answer is C, but let's verify C. So in these kind of rare questions where you don't have questions, you have at least percentage. So let's assume in one case that the percentage of people less than 50 years was just 2% and percentage of people less than 50 was, let's say, 98%. Now if this is the case and you know that we were talking about comparing 1999 and last year with respect to which of the following statistics? Percentage of people 50 years old. Okay, what about if this statistic changes? Would that strengthen the argument? See, because what you need, what you predicted as the answer was, you need to know the percentage of people who are younger than 50 who are being employed, men and women both, right? Isn't that what you predicted?
Yeah. Um.
So, do you think changing this percentage is going to have any effect?
No, I think because it's the overall population. That's what he's asking.
Hmm. But in the overall population, you divide it into two groups. One is more than 50, one is 50 or less than 50. The argument is already giving you information about this. You need information about this, the second group, which is missing, so that you can check whether the final conclusion is correct or not, whether you know that the percentage of these people is higher in the workforce than the percentage of these people, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Now it makes sense.
It makes sense. What about you, Priyanka?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Do you want to do this question once again?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, okay. Okay, so the proportion of people over the age of 50 in the workforce, this is general. So it's basically saying that if you look at the ratio of people above 50 and the people 50 or less than 50, it says this ratio has gone up. And how do they represent that in 1999 versus last year? We talk about men and women. In men, only 10% of the people or men over the age of 50 years were employed, and only 6% of the total women in that particular area that had age more than 50 were employed. This number increased to 18% last year, and this number increased to 14%. So it makes sense to find out what was the increase in the other age group, in this age group. So we know that this number, it actually increased. So the only information that we need to know is whether this number also increased or not. And for that, the only option that covers the entire age group is option C, because B talks about women, D talks about men, E talks about women, and A talks about not employed, which is basically 100 minus employed. And A also talks about over the age of 50, and we already have the statistics for over the age of 50, so A doesn't really help in this case. So C is the answer. Okay, any doubt?
Okay. Yeah.
No doubts.
So this is a tricky question type, definitely, because you have to do a lot of stuff in this, strengthen and weaken everything. Okay, let's do this one together. Let's read the argument first. A recent report shows that number of collisions between vehicles at junctions with electronic advertising signs, junctions with electronic ad signs, and number of collisions at junctions without these signs are same. Installation of electronic advertising signs at junctions therefore does not affect road safety. So I think the argument is pretty straightforward here. So I add signs do not affect road safety. Question is, which of the following would it be most useful to establish in order to evaluate the argument? Again, let's look at our 5 options. Okay, option A. If you answer yes, that yes, current figures for road accidents can be reduced by improving certain conditions such as lighting. Do you think it's relevant?
No. It's talking about ad signs and road safety.
Yes, and lighting doesn't matter. Okay, B. The companies that install the electronic signs have approval to do so.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Okay, C. More than 50% of collisions that take place at junctions are fatal. Do you think we're talking about fatality or non-fatality?
No.
No.
No. So again, does not matter. Then D. Companies being advertised by those signs report increases in number of customers that approach them.
No.
No.
No. So by elimination, it is E, but let's verify that once again. What if you answer yes to E? That yes, figures for accidents involving pedestrians are same for both types of junctions. So we're not just talking about collisions, but we're also talking about accidents involving pedestrians. What if that is also same? Does it strengthen the argument or weaken it?
It would strengthen.
Yes, because pedestrians would also come in road safety. What if the answer is no?
Yeah, that means ad signs are not relevant. Yeah.
Yes, they do impact road safety, if not for the vehicles, but definitely for pedestrians. So that would weaken this particular argument that ad signs do not have any effect on road safety because they clearly do. So E is the answer. Okay. Any doubt in this one?
No.
This one was a little more straightforward than the last one. Let's try this one also together, and then I'll give you a few questions to solve on your own. Okay, economist. Paying extra for fair trade coffee. Coffee labeled with a fair trade logo. Paying extra helps poor farmers because they receive a higher price for the fair trade coffee that they grow. But it may hurt more farmers in developing nations than it helps. By raising average prices for coffee, it encourages more coffee to be produced. So, more coffee is produced. So, basically, the demand is higher than supply. Demand exceeds the supply. This lowers price for the non-fair trade coffee and thus lowers profits for the non-fair trade coffee farmers. So it hurts farmers that are growing the non-fair trade coffee. So did you understand the argument? Any doubt about the argument? So basically the conclusion is that paying extra money for fair trade coffee, it actually hurts farmers in the developing nations because then the price for the non-fair trade coffee is reduced and they're not able to get the profits that they would have otherwise. So that's the main conclusion. Now we need to evaluate it. So let's go through these options one by one. What if you answer yes to option A? There is a way of alleviating, which is removing, the impact of the increased average prices for coffee on non-fair trade coffee farmers' profits. Do you think that is going to strengthen or weaken the argument or anything? What if there is a way?
Uh,
Or do you want to come back to this option?
yeah, that would be because this seems like this would strengthen,
Uh-huh.
and but
Okay, let's
still
go
have some
through
doubt.
some of the more clearly wrong options first.
Yeah,
B. What proportion of coffee farmers in developing nations produce fair trade coffee? What if the answer is 2 versus 98%? Would that make a difference? Because remember, we're talking about average prices for coffee.
no, this won't help.
Okay, what about C? Whether many coffee farmers in developing nations also derive income from other kinds of farming. Does it really matter?
No, it's irrelevant.
It's irrelevant. We're talking about profits from coffee. So C is gone. D. Consumers should pay extra if doing so lowers profits. Do you think consumers have anything to do with it?
No,
No. And E. How these people, these fair trade coffee farmers in developing nations could be helped without lowering. So this is looking at different kinds of plans. Do you think that would strengthen or weaken the argument?
um, no, it is. Hold on.
Because even if the answer is yes or no or anything, we would need some more information beyond option E. So E,
Yes.
it's not able to evaluate the argument at all. So yes, the answer is between A and B. Now read the argument once again and read these options once again.
B,
B.
because the proportion of farmers, if we know, uh, then if more farmers are producing more coffee, then uh, then it would then the uh, for excess coffee production, the prices of the coffee would be lower.
Mhm.
And if there are less farmers producing, then there would still be a lot of demand for that.
Yes, because it all depends on how many farmers are growing the non-fair trade coffee and how many are growing the fair trade coffee. And the loss is basically for the non-fair trade coffee farmers, not for the fair trade coffee farmers. Because for the fair trade ones, they get higher prices. The non-fair trade ones, they get lower prices. So it depends on what proportion of the farmers produce which kind of coffee, because that would change whether we need raising the higher average prices for coffee or not. So yes, B is the answer. Okay, Priyanka, did you understand? Did you get B as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so A is definitely gone. So why is A eliminated? Is there a way of alleviating the impact of prices? If there is a way, or if there is not a way, it doesn't really strengthen the argument or weaken it, anything. So A also doesn't matter because we're talking about impact of increased average prices. In any case, in option A, average prices are still being increased, but we don't have anything to do with the impact of those increased prices. So A is eliminated. Okay. So try this question on your own. And I'll give you about 3 to 4 minutes for this one. Okay, so I've eliminated two options. Do you have any answer from A, B, or C?
I got A.
Okay, and so if you answer yes, does that strengthen the argument or weaken it?
It actually weakens it, I think.
Among those scientists who do highly creative work beyond age 40, a large proportion entered their field at a later age. So that means that they did not spend so much time in a field. So that means the alternative explanation is not right. So it weakens it, and no strengthens it. Okay, what about B? Influenced by their own belief. It doesn't really matter. So B
Yeah.
is gone. And C. Do you think C matters?
It's tempting though, but it doesn't matter because it is up to them
Yes.
whether.
Mhm. It doesn't strengthen this particular argument about the time that they have spent in that field. So, yes, B is also eliminated. A is the answer. So, that's good that you got this one correct. Okay, try this one.
So it doesn't really matter whether it weakens or strengthens, yes or no. It's like
It
it
has
can
to
be
be
like
one each.
one each. Yeah.
Yeah.
C.
C. Okay, what about Priyanka? What about you?
Same.
Okay, so let me just write this down. So the cheese importation board responsible for all these things rejects about 1% of the cheese. Since the health consequences and costs of not rejecting that 1% would be negligible, but the cost of maintaining the agency is not. So basically, it says that the costs of that agency are higher than the benefits it provides, and you have to show whether it matters or not. Okay, so what if the answer is yes? It deters cheese exporters, so that means that the agency has some benefit, definitely. Or would it be the opposite? I think yes, because it would deter cheese exporters for shipping substandard cheese. So that means the quality will definitely improve. So it does have benefits. So yes would weaken the argument and no would strengthen. So yes, C is the answer. Okay, let's see. Exporters of cheese, not relevant. How is it disposed of? Not relevant. Inefficiencies within the agency, not relevant. Types of cheese also produced domestically, not relevant. Okay. All right, this is the last CR question for today. Okay. Any one of you has an option in mind?
think it's
Mhm.
B or A.
Okay, B. Circulation increase. So if the circulation has increased, that could be an alternate reason why the revenue from ads has increased, not because of the reorganization. So that would weaken. No would strengthen. Okay, let's keep B. A, what proportion of the total revenue is generated by advertising sales? It doesn't really matter. We're just talking about numbers here. The revenue has increased over the last time period before the reorganization or not. C.
It's tempting, right? Like it talks about the revenue, and
Mhm.
after reorganization, the advertising sales has increased.
But what if the total, let's say, the total amount has also increased and
Yeah.
proportion would still remain the same, even if the revenue from ad increases? What if
Yes.
revenue from other sources also increases?
Yes.
Right? So it is tempting, yes, but it won't, yeah, it won't strengthen or weaken. And in C, it talks about types of advertising clients. It doesn't be relevant. Fixed amount of advertising per month. Uh, it doesn't matter if there is a client or there are many or there's none.
Yeah.
Retail versus industrial doesn't matter. So yes, B is the answer. Priyanka, did you also get the same?
Yeah, I got B.
All right, that's good. So let's move
In
on.
the options, if like the in the answers, the information, or like see in the option D, do any clients or the sales representative have a standing order with times? So this does not give anything, or this passage does not give anything about the option D.
Yeah.
So the question is, uh, would there be any kind of answers where we have to deduce from it, or like uh, what I'm trying to ask is
Yeah,
the
like
information that is not there in the passage.
mhm.
Could there be any circumstances where we can still consider that?
um yeah, like most of these questions, especially the strengthening and weakening one, they're all fictional options. It's all about the scope, if it is relevant to this argument or not. Like if I'm talking about some other newspaper, definitely no. But over here it talks about circulation of this paper increased or not. That's also a little outside the argument, but yes, it helps us to answer this question. So it all depends on, does it really matter or not? Because B would matter, but D would not matter.
Okay.
But yeah, definitely, I think if it talks about a completely different city or completely different paper, uh, or a completely different source of revenue, I think you can eliminate those options safely. Like A is an option that you need to go through carefully. D would not matter because it talks about the type of orders for advertising. And E would not matter because it talks about different kinds of businesses, which will not be relevant. But you will have to talk about A, B, and C in much more detail. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So let's try to solve one passage today, one reading passage. So we won't spend a lot of time, like one third of the time in reading passages, but we'll do solve at least one passage every week. So, okay, let's solve this one. It's a short passage on GDP. So you have about 3-4 minutes to map the passage, and then we look at a few questions. Okay, so your time starts now. Okay, so I assume you've understood the passage. What I want you to tell me is what do you think is the primary purpose of this passage? Okay,
Pretty
Priyanka,
much,
let's start with you.
yeah, evaluate GDP as a measure of the economy and pretty much
Yeah.
speak against it.
And what do you think they're saying? Is it a good indicator or not?
Not because it doesn't take into account societal and environmental degradation and negative effects of GDP on that.
Yeah. Okay. And Lakshmi, do you want to add anything to that?
No, she covered pretty much everything.
Yeah. Okay. So let's look at the question that talks about primary purpose. So you have a prediction in mind. What do you think about option A? Ways in which it could be modified. Does it talk about the ways?
No,
No. B. In spite of shortcomings, it is the most reliable.
it's too extreme.
Yes, it's extreme. Okay. C. Examining crucial shortcomings as an indicator.
Yeah, could be.
Could be. Okay. D. Argue that the growth of the US economy has diminished effectiveness of GDP as an indicator. Do you think
No,
the
No,
cause effect relationship is correct?
no,
No.
no,
All right. And E, discuss how it came to be used.
no.
No, it doesn't give you the history of how we started using the GDP. So that's very good. C is the answer, and you were able to do this very quickly. That's very good. Okay, second question, a specific question. Which of the following best describes function of the second sentence in the passage in context of the whole passage? So that is this one. Okay, does it describe an assumption that is defended in the course of the passage?
No,
No, it's not defended. It is an assumption, but not defended. Does it contribute to discussion of origins of GDP?
no,
no,
No. Clarifies a common misconception?
no.
no,
No. Identifies a major flaw?
Yeah,
Okay, and revision suggests a revision in the method of calculating. No.
no.
So again, this you were able to do very quickly. So what I want you to take away from this question is that for every answer that you eliminate, every option you eliminate, you should have at least one word in that option that makes it wrong. That's why I was highlighting these words like defended, origins, method, misconception. These are all wrong words. Without these, the options seem correct, but because of these words, the options are becoming wrong. And you should be able to identify that one word in every option. Okay, let's go to the next one. It's an inference question, which means it's not mentioned in the paragraph, but it should nonetheless be 100% true. It can be inferred that the author of the passage would agree with which of the following about economic significance of those goods and services that are included in the GDP. So, option A, it is a comprehensive indicator of the nation's economic well being.
no,
No,
Because it misses out a lot of important things. It is not accurately captured by the price of those goods and services.
no,
Are you
no,
sure?
it's not actually captured the price of.
Economic significance. Economic
It could
significance
be.
is here. It could be B.
Could
B
be.
is
Yeah.
very close to what's being said here. Uh, so Priyanka, why did you think B is wrong?
because it's saying that the goods and services are significantly. Um, it's I think it's kind of negating each other because they're asking you the economic significance of these goods and services that are included in the GDP.
So it's
And
that the author would agree with which about the economic
yeah,
significance. So economic significance is given in double quotes, which kind of lets you know that it's not that economically significant, means it's not that accurate. So B, it is not accurately captured by the price of those goods and services. So apart from the price, something else should be included in the economic significance, right? Isn't that what what this sentence is also showing? It ignores the economic significance because you can't put a price on clean environment and cohesive families and communities. So B should stay. Okay, let's look at the other options first. It's usually less than the intrinsic value. Do you think this comparison is mentioned anywhere?
No, it
It's
is
not
saying, yeah,
mentioned.
it is saying any intrinsic value that not because of any intrinsic value. So
Yeah.
it can't be. Yeah.
This comparison is not there. So comparisons are also one of the very common trap answers. Okay, D, it is more difficult, again a comparison, to calculate economic significance of those that are not included in GDP. So we don't know that. So D is gone. It is calculated differently in capitalist and non-capitalist countries. Do you really know that?
It's not
From
given.
it's not given. The calculation method is not given. So E is eliminated. Although they both use GDP, but the method we don't know if it's same or not. So it is B because the author of the passage is also trying to say the same thing, that the economic significance cannot be captured by the price. It has to go beyond price. So B is the answer. So Priyanka, did you understand how B is the answer?
yeah, I just read it wrong.
Right. Okay. All right, let's try the fourth question on this. Comparison of GDP to a calculating machine. So this is given in the last sentence. Serves to do which of the following? So why is it given? Option A, refute an assertion that calculations involved in GDP are complex in nature. Are we talking about complexity?
No,
No. Okay, B, indicate that GDP is better suited to record certain types of transactions than others. Basically, that GDP cannot record every kind of transaction in an effective manner.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, because there are some transactions that will give you a negative effect, like oil spills. So that it can't record very well. So B could be the answer. C suggests that it is likely that GDP will be supplanted by other more sophisticated economic indicators.
it's not given.
Not given. Okay, illustrate the point that GDP has no way of measuring the destructive impact of such things. Do you think it has no way?
No.
No, it actually masks this. So some kind of calculation is being done, but it's just being done in the opposite direction. So D is gone. Exemplify. First of all, it's not an example, but it kind of is. So let's leave this one. Exemplify an assertion that the GDP tends to exaggerate the amount of commercial activity generated by things such as oil spills. Okay, what do you think about E?
I don't think so. Just because
Because it just says generates commercial activity. We have nothing about exaggerate. So E is gone. B is the answer. Uh, B. Wait, let me check once again. Is it? No, no, I think we made a mistake here.
I think it should be E, I think.
No, E is wrong. I think it should be D. Wait, let me check the answer to this.
Just comparing it to the calculator, right?
So it says the nation's central measure of economic well-being, so GDP. It works like a calculating machine that adds but cannot subtract. Certain types of monetary. Yeah, I think B is wrong because it also talks about the money.
Yeah.
And I think I did not consider that before. So B is wrong. The actual answer is D.
Yeah.
Yeah, B is wrong because of the monetary part. So I eliminated D because of no way of measuring. Do you think that is, we can infer that from the passage? Illustrate that point that GDP has no way.
You can't deduct it from the calculations.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yes. The subtract part of it, I think that's how it relates to not being able to measure the destructive impact of oil spill. So it cannot subtract. Okay, yeah, D is the answer. Okay, Lakshmi, did you get it?
Yeah, I got it. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks.
I think one of you or both of you had D as one of your original answers as well. Yeah, D is fine. Okay, fifth
E
one.
was confusing actually. It was not the straight answer at least.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, fifth one. The passage implies that national policies that rely heavily on economic indicators such as GDP tend to become increasingly capitalistic in nature. Do you think it's mentioned?
Talks about capitalistic countries, but it doesn't really talk. It's not about the actual GDP.
Yeah, and it's not talking about a trend towards capitalism or non capitalism. It just compares the capitalist and non capitalist countries. So A is gone. Okay,
Yeah.
B.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, B is matching what we think about the passage. C. I think
Oh.
similar to the other wrong option that we had in the last question about exaggerating.
Yep.
So yeah, C is gone. Overestimates economic significance of cohesive families and communities. I think it
That's the
ignores.
opposite.
Same thing. I think.
Yeah. Okay. E. Assume that economic significance of goods and services does not lie solely in the price of those goods and services. I think this is the opposite of what the passage tells us.
Yeah.
It tells us solely in their price. So yes, E is gone. B is the answer. That's correct. And this is the last question for today. Assessment of GDP. Okay, C is gone. Okay, out of A and E.
E.
Yes, because you are not comparing the United States to other nations. So, yes, E is the answer. Okay, so this one was.
And A is also a trap answer, right? Because it is putting marked social and environmental erosions, which
Mhm.
is directly in the passage.
Yes, so till here, um, it's correct, but the second part of it, this comparison more fully than, because we really don't know anything about these indicators, so we can't be sure.
Yes.
Right? So half of the option is right, the other half makes it wrong. So yeah, E is the answer. So that is all that we will be doing today. So I'll do this passage next week. Okay, so instead of comparisons in the next class, we are going to do more questions on parallelism. And yeah, in critical reasoning, we will focus on paradox and completing the passage kind of questions. So any kind of change that you would like in the next class's agenda or anything? Is there any other error apart from parallelism that you would like to repeat?
Maybe ones that like are, I know most of the questions contain various errors, but it would be nice if like they're questions that are like all encompassing and more confusing so we can get used to that.
Okay. So you need to practice questions having like 3 or 4 errors in them.
Yeah, I guess that would be
Okay.
helpful.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? And Priyanka, what about your practice test? Have you taken one?
Um, no, not yet.
Okay.
Uh,
So
so,
both of you try to
you
complete it by this weekend, if
okay?
possible. Yeah. And yeah, I wanted to ask you about your quant class. So, do you think any day like tomorrow or day after tomorrow works for you at the same time that we had a class today?
It's just really hard. This it's not like the best time, but if there's no other time, I'd rather do it in the mornings. If we can do it this normal Saturday and then do it maybe like just postpone it one day so we're one day behind schedule, would that work or should we just fit it in this week?
Okay, all right. And what about you, Lakshmi? Would that be fine with you if we have a regular class for?
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with any timing which is comfortable for all of you. I mean, don't worry about my timing. It's always a yes.
Okay, all right. All right, so the quant class will be this Saturday as usual, like my Saturday, and verbal would be again at the same time that it's usually there on Sunday. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Also, do you mind putting the presentations up on the thing so I can just like
Sure. I'll put the
okay.
presentation up as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that's all for this class today. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, bye.